In order to understand why gold is such an important financial asset, we need to understand the history of gold. There's a very long history with gold and money. It goes back to 3000 BC, where the pharaohs used it for trade. More recently, gold acted as an anchor to the financial system. Each unit of paper currency was related back to a weight of gold, and this restricted government's ability to create money, to increase the money supply. And therefore, by doing this, it also restricted inflation. In fact, if we look at the period from 1800 up to 1944, we'd see that there was little or no inflation. In fact, £1 or even $1 would have bought you the same basket of goods at the start of the period as it would have at the end. In 1944, at the Bretton Woods Conference in the US, a global pseudo gold standard was designed in order to facilitate international trade. This new system linked global currencies to the US dollar, and the US dollar was in turn then linked to gold. Central banks could then convert their US dollar reserves into gold. The price of gold was set at $35, and this remained until 1971. However, the US engaged in the Korean War and the Vietnam War, and during this period, from the mid-50s, the money supply expanded, and this was not matched by a change in the price of gold. As other nations started to suspect the US monetary expansion, particularly the French, they started to convert their US dollar holdings into gold. As a result of this, US gold reserves started to dwindle. And on August 15, 1971, US President Richard Nixon made a television announcement that the gold window was to be closed. There were two outcomes from this. Central banks were left holding dollars, and this made the US dollar the reserve currency. And also the link to gold was severed. Governments were now free to create money. The global fiat currency experiment had begun. High price inflation took hold in the 70s as the money supply increased, and savings and purchasing power were decimated. The price of gold soared as it tried to keep up with the money supply, hitting a peak in 1980 of $825 per ounce. The first time in our recent history that gold has actually matched the money supply. Inflation became public enemy number one. Government policy in the 80s and 90s was dedicated to tackling inflation. In the second half of the 90s, we saw the dot-com bubble that burst in 2000. Unemployment increased, business failures increased, and this triggered a recession. This recession in 2000 and 2001 represents a turning point for gold. As interest rates were driven down, money supply was expanded, and the US and other nations engaged on the war on terror. And then of course we had the financial crisis of 2008, with unprecedented quantitative easing. Gold is now once again trying to catch up with the money supply, with the additional pressures of emerging markets and supply constraints. If you believe governments will continue to print money, you will need to own gold.